Hey everybody, welcome to our newly formed YouTube channel with Tea with Therapist or Therapist with the Tea, whichever one sounds good. So today's topic of discussion is supposed to be about fighting those holiday blues, post-holiday blues. Everybody's gone, the traditions have all ended, and then just really combating those feelings of loneliness and just getting back to like the regular monotony of day-to-day life. And I tried really hard to get that video together. I tried really hard to just kind of put together the thoughts to make it something that would be engaging and interesting for everyone. But something that really just kept repeating in my head over and over and over again was the phrase, hyper independence is a sign of trauma. That if you are hyper independent, that means you are traumatized or that your childhood was traumatic. And it just kind of put me on a mental thought of how much of our language has changed to this like victimizing the things that we have done to empower ourselves. I can remember a time growing up when we were fighting so hard to not be the damsel in distress. Like, if you think about all the movies and TV shows that we've grown up with it was the girl who was stranded and needed a man to come and save her, or just needed someone. We're not even going to classify it by gender. We're just going to say the damsel in distress movement, where it's something bad is happening and somebody has to save me. Somebody has to fix it. Somebody has to be the problem solver. And that was the world we grew up in. Every movie that you talked about, every TV show, everything, it always had the damsel in distress. And I can distinctly recall growing up and thinking, I don't want to be the person that someone always has to save. They're really annoying. Like, why can't you just like build your own ladder and climb down the window? Why can't you ask questions to be able to get to a solution? And it used to make me so mad to watch these people act so helpless. And then this person come in and like 1-2, and next thing you know, they just saved the world and they were getting all the praise and all the glory and all the attention. And from that moment, it was, you know what? I don't want to be the damsel in distress. And even if you look at TV scripts and things of that, I can't think of the exact term or phrase right now, but there was like a study that was done where it talked about if two women are in a conversation, how long can they talk about something else before it talks about a man? Or before it talks about a relationship, or before it talks about like some type of intimate thing. And just that thought alone of, are we diminished to our communication for how it benefits somebody else, or is our communication so diminished that the only thing that we can really talk about is the relationships that we have with another person, or missing another person, or loving another person, that we can't have healthy conversation anymore, communication anymore? But that's a tangent. Coming back to the phrase, hyper independence means that you were traumatized. Am I negating that? Am I saying that we are not hyper independent because of things that have happened to us in our lives? No. But what about those of us who became hyper independent because we did not want to be the damsel in distress? What about some of us that learned new traits and new skills as a means to cope with the life and the cards that we were dealt with? Sometimes our hyper independence is formed out of a just like excitement to learn new things, and excitement for knowledge, and excitement for creativity. And it just cultivated into this, why do I have to wait for you to do it? I can do it myself. And if you really think closely on coping skills, how many coping skills do you think about when I say, or if you've ever been in therapy before, oh yeah, I need a coping skill. I need a coping skill to deal with my depression. I need a coping skill to deal with my anxiety. Most people always say, like, oh, well, I've tried everything. I read a book. I tried to meditate. I went for a walk. I tried to exercise. I tried to do all these things. And I tell my clients all the time, like, well, then why are you still forcing yourself to do it? A coping skill should not be stressful. A coping skill should not cause you more strife. A coping skill should bring you peace. So why are we scrutinizing people for becoming hyper independent by developing a coping skill? Let me explain what I mean by this. Okay. I'm going to use me because I know me better than anybody else. For me, a coping skill is to learn something because I find learning fun. I find learning interesting. I find weird, cuckoo little facts very interesting and engaging. So if I am going through things or if I want to overcome something, I dive into a new skill. Whether if that's latch work, whether if that's becoming a professional painter, an electrician, if it's changing my oil, doesn't mean that I'm going to go and keep that skill and I'm going to make a trade out of it and I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm a master mechanic or I'm a master painter or master electrician. No. But what that does for me is that like scratches that little itch that I have internally that's like, you know what, hey, how are we processing through something? We're doing it through an action that we enjoy. We enjoy to learn something. What is something that we typically have to pay for? Or what is something that we typically see other people do and maybe it just was of interest to us? So we want to give it a shot. And we take the time to learn and we invest our time in that. Does that make that individual hyper independent because they chose to cope by learning a new skill? Does that make that person hyper independent because they have also learned that it causes them more stress to wait for somebody else to do it and them not to do it than to just do it themselves? Does that make them traumatized? Does that make them a damsel in distress? What does that make them? Why does it have to make them anything? Why can't they just be a person who is making it to the next day? If we were to look at the power of language that we have in today's community, in today's society, and we have such victim language, what happened to us using such empowering words about ourselves and about others? So instead of telling someone that hyper independence means that you are a victim of trauma, what if we can say hyper independence means that you have the ability to learn things? Hyper independence also means that maybe you figured it out how to be a problem solver. Maybe hyper independence is a way for you to just be okay today. And why can't we celebrate that hyper independence? Because maybe that hyper independence led for them to go to therapy. Maybe that hyper independence got rid of that codependence on a bad relationship. Maybe that hyper independence led to an opportunity that they never would have thought they would take in by themselves. Maybe that hyper independence led to an improvement of their self-esteem. So instead of us victimizing people and saying, well, yeah, you're only hyper independent because it's a trauma response. It's a trauma response, so that means something's wrong with you. No, you're hyper independent because you are a badass. That is why you're hyper independent. And it's okay to be that. And it's okay to feel empowered today and tomorrow and the next day and not have to live your life wondering like, oh, what traumatic experiences did I have in my life that led me to a place where I am hyper independent? How does this relate back to like the holiday and fighting those post-holiday blues? Exactly that. Like I feel like I tied it all together, but let me put it all in one line for you. You can fight hyper independence and the victim mentality of it. You can also fight these holiday blues by just using the empowerment of self. Empower yourself to be okay. Empower yourself to know that hyper independence is okay. Empower yourself to know that a coping skill does not have to be reading a book, walking, listening to music, writing in your journal. It doesn't have to be those things. A coping skill can be something as simple as something that brings you joy. Did you do something that brings you joy today and it didn't take away from everything? Meaning that it didn't hurt you financially, didn't hurt you physically, but instead it built you up and it put you in a better place. It pushed you to be in a better mental space. Not you did it and then 10 minutes later you're like, oh my gosh, I regret this. That's not a coping skill. It's you did it and you feel a sense of fulfillment and you feel a sense of pride that you were accomplishing something. So that's all I got for you today. So see you next week, and hopefully we'll have some new topics for Tea with Therapist or Therapist with the Tea. We'll figure it out by the time we get to the next session or the next episode. If you have any thoughts, comments, or ideas, please be sure to leave them in the comments below. Any topics you'd like us to cover or discuss, don't hesitate to send us a message. If you are interested in therapy, please reach out to helensproject.org or give us a call at 830-400-7037. We'd be lucky and happy to have you. And please note that everything that is shared in these videos is totally meant for just informational purposes. But if you do need help and support from a professional therapist, please reach out to Helen's Project, or you can reach out to your local insurance company or your Health and Human Services department to find yourself something to better suit your needs. If you're in crisis, don't hesitate to reach out to 911 and get yourself the support you need. Until we meet again, thanks. Bye.